Alright, so I wanted to do a video response to Jason's video response to my video, so I might be breaking some sort of YouTube rule here, and I don't know if we're going to make like a wormhole by doing this or anything like that, but he brought up an album that is just one of my absolute favorites, and just a ton of talking points that we can talk about it. So talk to Jason about this directly rather than commenting over and over and over again. This is the easiest way to do it. So and also share it to the vinyl community. So he showed Love Forever Changes, which, oh my god, this is just an amazing album. Great group. Each album that they put out, their sound changed every time. So they're definitely an artist that, and he kind of mentioned about the 60s, about how the cultural aspect of it, everything was changing. And if you look at Love through the course of their career, and even Arthur Lee's solo stuff, basically billed as Love, I would probably say this was the definitive lineup. The first 3 albums is probably the definitive lineup. So this, of course, 3rd album, I believe he mentioned that. But they were just a really cool band. And how I discovered them, I mean, it's sort of a long story. I mean, it's something where I know I mentioned in my one video, sort of tongue-in-cheek there, that the album that defines the 60s for me was the Doors' first album. I went through that phase where I just listened to a ton of Doors music, kind of obsessed with Jim Morrison and all that. Was at an impressionable age. I think I was maybe like 14, 15 years old, something like that. So he definitely spoke to me. But I really got immersed in a lot of stuff about the Doors, and of course they're on the Elektra label with Love. And every once in a while, I'd come across things, and Love would sort of be a footnote, and I really didn't explore them probably until, I would say there's a couple of things that really stick out in my mind about this album in particular. I would see it on a lot of lists. I know, like, when I was reading Mojo magazine pretty intensely, a lot of times this would come up. I know that there was something where Robert Plant cited this as one of his favorite albums, and the cover is just a very iconic cover. It's kind of funny because the band members that are, you got kind of the big 3 here, really were the bigger players, Johnny Nichols, Brian McLean, and Arthur Lee. But it was one of those albums that I was just like, I heard a lot of stuff about, and I think kind of like 2 things sort of happened. I was in college. I did a college radio station. I was like a DJ. Also, was like a producer. I did this show that I just played classic rock music. And one day, one of the DJs was in there, and we were talking about the Brian Jonestown Massacre. And he's like, "Oh, you listen to Brian Jonestown Massacre? You should listen to Love." He's like, that they stole a lot of stuff from Love. And I was like, "Oh, really?" It's kind of just a passing comment. And then one day I went to a bookstore that was on the campus, and they had John Densmore's his autobiography. I think it's called Break On Through. It came out sort of in the late 80s. I think right around, it might have been before the Oliver Stone movie. I think the Oliver Stone movie was in the 90s, but I think that came out first, and then the Oliver Stone movie came out. But he mentioned about how he wanted to be in Love, and he would go see Love. They would be playing, at one place on the Sunset Strip, and Love would be playing at the Whiskey A Go Go. So they were sort of the house band at the time. And an interesting thing about Love is, one of the reasons I think they weren't as popular as the Doors is basically the Doors toured. Arthur Lee really never left Los Angeles. So well, you had bands like the Doors and the Byrds. They were all upstarts, on the Sunset Strip and Buffalo Springfield and things like that. They were going out and they were touring, where Arthur Lee really didn't do that. Even being at a very young age, he was very, he was kind of the king of the Sunset Strip, if you will. So a lot of people looked up to him. And it's just kind of a shame. I mean, it's at the same time it's a very awesome group, to kind of get into. They have a very, a lot of the guys were doing needle drugs and things like that. So there was some dark times with this band, and I think it really it definitely shows in the music. Forever Changes really almost did not happen, just because that there was a lot of session musicians and things like that, and there was points when the band were, they were just pretty much in tears because they felt like they were, being replaced because they couldn't play bass parts and things like that. So, and I mean, this album is just almost every single song is so good. I'm going to listen to it, as soon as I'm done with this video, because it's been a while since I've listened to it. I mean, a couple of months or so, but just Brian McLean. I mean, he used to be a roadie for the Byrds, so he kind of that's him right there. He used to be a roadie for the Byrds, so he kind of already had, he was a good-looking guy. So they were definitely a cool band. They kind of oozed cool. So this is a phenomenal album. If you don't have this in your collection, and I think Jason really he put it very eloquently, that this is just an amazing album of the '60s, and it definitely is one that I would say that would define the '60s. And it's there's definitely a lot of compilations out there that cover it. Here's one thing I just wanted to show real quick. This is on Sundays. Let me see if I can hold this so you don't. There we go. That's perfect. It's just sort of like solo stuff that Brian McLean did, sort of like some demos and all that. That's pretty cool to see. Love and hate. But I think there's some earlier versions of Orange Skies and All Alone Again, which is just a fantastic song. Alone Again, and I think Arthur really didn't give Brian as much of a chance as he could have. There was some good songs. I mean, both of their songs are phenomenal. That's why Forever Changes is such a good album. But there was definitely some creative control that you could tell that was kind of going on. And pretty much after Forever Changes, I mean, for the most part, I think Brian might have done maybe like one or two solo albums, or honestly, I can't really say for sure. I mean, I really haven't followed into that, which is sort of a crime in itself, I guess. But it's one of those things where it's such a great band that I think everybody should you should definitely check out. But here's something really cool. There's a lot of love compilations out there. There's the other one that's sort of the Rhino, kind of the best of love. I have it. I don't want to dig it up, but I have it. But this one I think is sort of the definitive one. This one is Love Story, which it's sort of like it's a two-disc set. It's put out on Rhino. I think it's out of print now, if my memory serves me correctly. But this one is pretty much like it's a lot of times when you get the love compilations, they focus a lot on the first, second, and third album, and then maybe one or two songs from the other one, if that. Or some of the singles. This really is a more comprehensive study of love, if you will. So it's from 66 to 72. I want to say that I think that Forever Changes, I think, is covered in its entirety here, which is, let me just check real quick here. Okay, so there's two on here that are not on Forever Changes, which is Bummer in the Summer and oh no, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. It's covered in its entirety on here. So sorry I wasted like a minute just looking that up, but I couldn't remember if I thought it was. Usually what I do when I put my CDs on iTunes, I go through and I select the stuff that I have on CDs, so it's like I can still listen to the album in its album form. And then this is on, so I can't say, it's not like I'm pulling for this all the time, but it does cover Forever Changes in its entirety. So, for basically, a two-disc compilation, and I think really too with the Capo, the Capo is on here too, which is the album prior, or Da Capo, depending on how you pronounce it. Everything except the one side, which was a song called Revelation, which is a meandering thing. So. But just fantastic group. If you've never heard of Love, or if you are out there and you want to take a chance on a band, go with this one. Forever Changes is a great place to start. Their first album is more like sort of a garage rock sound. Their second album, they're sort of discovering their sound. You have a lot of flutes and things like that. And then, I think Forever Changes is definitely the masterpiece. So, Jason, thank you so much for responding, and I can't believe I just spoke 10 minutes about that album. So I can talk a lot more, but everybody's time is limited. So, I thank you for watching, and we'll see you around.